Let's begin now.
Hello and welcome to what should be episode 2, but in all reality is episode 1 of kind of a revamp here of the Land of 10,000 Losses. I'm 1/3 of your host, Zach Wright. You can find me on Twitter at RealZachWright. Across from the table for me is Travis Hartman. You'll hear him pretty often here, as well as Justin Labounty, who's not here with us tonight. He's in the midst of a move from Colorado back to the Minnesota, the Land of 10,000 Lakes, but in this case, the Land of 10,000 Losses. And we took a big loss last week.
Yes.
Somehow, we sat here, to give you a little bit of background information, we sat here at the recording studio, a.k.a. Travis's house, and we recorded a full episode, sounded great, nice revamp, not strictly all sports, in post-edit, and all of a sudden, tons of the audio is not there. We recorded, what was it, like an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and a half?
Yeah, because we started going on rants about like wrestling and stuff, and
Yeah,
like we really went off.
And that's going to be this podcast. This podcast is not going to only be...
It's guy talk, roughly guy talk.
Right, roughly guy talk. It's not going to only be sports. It's not going to only be a lot of those things. It's going to be a lot of video game talk.
Yes.
Anything from beer, movies, sports, video games, like I mentioned. Just kind of a whole variety of topics. But we record an hour and 15-minute, hour and a half show in post-recording or in post-editing, and there's 9 minutes saved. Not really sure what happened. Something got deleted in the middle of everything. And that's like the single worst feeling as some sort of a content creator is losing the content that you create. Because there's no getting that back.
No, and you're left with 9 minutes. What are you going to put out a 9-minute episode? Not going to happen. And I want to like put out a point too, because we're going to really really get going with this podcast. And like we talked about before, it's not going to be just strictly sports. It's going to be a wide variety of things that guys talk about when they're hanging out. And we are looking for possible places to ever do a live recording at a bar or restaurant. So if you have a place in mind, if you work at a place, or if you know of a place that's like a mall or something, whatever, let us know. We'll be happy to do a pretty cool live episode, because that'd be something we've been talking about for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this coming to you here in the Land of 10,000 Losses. We did catch a big L last week. Hopefully that we turn that around this week and we get out a good episode here, episode 1 of sort of our revamp. We're here in 2017. I think it'd be wrong of us to not say we hope that everybody had a great holiday sort of little break, kind of whatever they celebrate, whether you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever else is right around that time of the year, New Year obviously as well. But we do have lots of topics that we can talk about. Again, we're not going to limit it to only sports. We tried that before. I think we format it too much like a radio show. It just doesn't sound too listenable. For a while it's fun, but I think, we tell stories. That's fun to listen to. We just some open dialogue back and forth, but we will limit ourselves to a couple of topics. We've got a couple of sports topics. Last time we were going to come to you, the Wild. We're in the middle of a 10-game winning streak. They had just beaten Nashville. Since then, they dropped that streak to the Columbus Blue Jackets in a thriller on New Year's Eve. That was a fun game to watch. The United States juniors team took down Canada in Canada, which is easily, as a sports fan, one of the best things is taking down Canada in hockey in Canada for a gold medal.
Satisfying is the way to put it.
Satisfying, to say the least.
Yeah.
The Timberwolves suck. We're watching that game right now. They're playing the Washington Wizards. Currently 9.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. We'll have a final score for that in this podcast. By the time you listen to it, you'll know the score of this game if you give two shits about the Timberwolves, down 87-85. The Minnesota Vikings missed the playoffs. We've got some topics, though, regarding Adrian Peterson to maybe talk about a little bit later on, whether we should keep him, let him go, what our feelings are on that. We'll talk a little bit of video games. We'll talk a little bit of everything. I kind of leave it up to you. Where do you want to start? We've got lots of stuff we can go over, and I'm really down to start wherever.
Well, traditionally, we would dive into sports first on our old podcast. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's start off with a little video game talk. Obviously, we will get to the PJ Fleck news and all that good stuff right there, the wild streak.
I didn't even mention that.
We'll talk about all of that coming up in just a little bit. But I am what I like to call a GTA nerd, to say the least. We've talked about it before. You're a GTA fan. I'm a GTA fan. And I've had GTA on Xbox 360, and I got GTA on Xbox One. And recently, I got GTA 5 for PS4. And we talked about it before, the comparisons between PS4 and Xbox One, and I definitely like having the GTA 5 on PS4 more. I just like how it plays out. I like how the smoother gameplay is. And not even just for GTA, but for Chell and for all that stuff. But the fact that what I like about GTA is, when the cops are after you, your controller starts flashing red and blue.
Yeah.
And when you're playing missions, which I'm a huge mission guy, and you'll get a call from one of the characters in the game, and all of a sudden, because I told you before we went on there, I had the TV on mute.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I wasn't used to it, and I got a phone call on my game, and all of a sudden, like, I'm just, TV's on mute, it's quiet, listen to the radio, and all of a sudden, my phone just goes, yeah, I'll get you a taxi in a second. I was like, oh,
yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, it's just weird little subtle things like that make,
yeah.
In my for me, I've got the luxury of having both systems. I think you've got both systems as well. I've always been an Xbox guy.
Me too.
Always. I had Xbox Live. I've had Xbox Live since probably 7th, maybe 8th grade.
There you go.
Maybe even longer than that, honestly. But I did make a switch to PlayStation last year. The new Call of Duty Black Ops 3 went over, and kind of the competitive sort of gaming kind of went strictly to PlayStation. So I had to obviously follow along suit just because that's kind of who I am.
Sure.
So I went with the PlayStation route. I've enjoyed playing PlayStation. I've kind of gone back a little bit more Xbox. Recently, I'm playing a lot of Rainbow Six, Tom Clancy game, another one of those great games in that series. There's another one coming out, not Rainbow Six, but it's another Tom Clancy game or another Splinter Cell game, something like that coming up in a couple of months, which will be fun too. We'll get into that later on in the podcast down the line in a couple of weeks. But as far as GTA is concerned, I played a lot of GTA on Xbox. That's kind of where we started. I think I remember we were both at Century.
Yes.
And we had a sports management class, and it was right after that we went to go pick up GTA. We came back to your house. It's probably 11 a.m. or something like that. And I don't think we stopped gaming until probably 2 a.m. that night into the next day. And we had beaten the game, or we had gotten real far into the game before we continued it the next day. And
well, a little breaking news. We both like our food. We both like our food runs, especially when we're gaming.
I don't know if that's breaking news.
I don't know if that's breaking news.
That may not be breaking news, but
Not
that's
for-
just a little little update or a little
For all the people
food is
listening
still,
to us.
we're still a fan of food.
Yes. And after we just got Raising Cane's, of course, we're doing this podcast. But when we would get the game, and we gamed so long that we ended up we got breakfast together, we got lunch together, and we ended up getting dinner together.
Yep.
Because we were gaming for so long. But that's what a fun video game does, man. We had so much fun with that game, that story mode. And we talked about it so many times where you're more of the online guy, I'm more of a story mode guy. But I think if I was in your shoes, where you had all these friends online playing stuff like that, I think I'd be in your shoes. But for me, I'm just like a solo gamer. I play, occasionally me and you will play GTA or whatever.
Yeah.
Chell, whatever. But I'm such like a huge GTA story guy, or story mode guy in general. But Grand Theft Auto, man, we had so much fun with that game. And I remember going to that sports management class, and everybody was talking about it.
Yeah.
It was... Man, that was 2013 of September. It was huge.
I think it was that big. Well, I think it was that big because it had been 5 years since the last installment. And Grand Theft Auto, I mean, you know what? GTA 3, that was released in what? 2001? Yeah.
About? Yeah, right.
And it's like that was, I mean, so realistically, since Grand Theft Auto 3, there's only been a handful of games since. You know, whereas in today's, it's weird to say like in today's age because we're both, in our early 20s, but in today's age, it's really like, you've got a new Call of Duty every year. You've got obviously new sports games every year with good reason for those, obviously. But it's like Grand Theft Auto, they really take their time, and it's because because of the fact that they do such a heavy story thing. They've got to obviously write the story, and we've talked about it in the past. I think the creators of Grand Theft Auto say they've got something like 60 years worth of content that they could do. Or,
crazy, yeah.
It's like, it's weird. You've got 60 years of content, and you release a new game every 5 years. You basically have content for forever, essentially. Well,
they literally perfected that game. GTA 5 was about as flawless as you can get. It sold $1 billion in 3 days, which is that's insane. That's crazy. Yeah,
I think it's top. God, it may be top 3 now of best-selling games.
Oh yeah, wouldn't doubt it.
I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. But I mean, and it's no surprise,
right,
that it's that high.
look at a guy like what it's done for these actors. Look at a guy like Stephen Ogg, who played Trevor in the game, one of the main characters. Stephen Ogg is now on The Walking Dead. Mm-hmm. He's now on Westworld, which is, everybody knows, it's a huge. I haven't seen it, but it's a huge show right now on HBO. He's on those two huge shows because he was Trevor in GTA because of a video game, and I've always been a huge GTA fan, but that game took it to another level. I remember Chris Cluey, when the game first came out, he tweeted out comparisons between real life LA and the LA that they depicted in GTA 5, and it was identical. It was absolutely identical. And the graphics, when they moved to the next-gen consoles, just got even better. So, I mean, I'm playing it right now because, like I said, I just got it for PS4, and I've had it for Xbox One for a long time, but I got it on PS4. My brother and I are doing the story mode because my brother's never done the story mode before, and we were watching clips on YouTube, and my brother's like, this is like a movie. He's like, why don't we play this? I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to fucking tell you.
Yeah,
it's such a fun game, man.
Yeah, currently right now, just taking a look. According to Wikipedia, obviously everybody has their own thoughts on Wikipedia, but currently, according to Wikipedia, Grand Theft Auto is the 4th best-selling game of all time, behind number 1 Tetris, which is kind of unfair in my opinion because Tetris is so it takes into consideration your phone, computer, console versions,
right?
Minecraft, which is a lot of the same phone, computer, console versions. Wii Sports is number 3, which also is kind of unfair because Wii Sports, I think, came with the Wii.
Yeah, exactly.
And so any console sold or any system sold for the Wii, that counts basically for Wii Sports being sold because technically it was sold. So realistically, if you discount Tetris and you discount Wii Sports, because I do consider Minecraft very much so a console game, even though it's more PC oriented. Grand Theft Auto 5 is the 2nd best-selling video game of all time, surpassed Mario, surpassed the likes of a couple of different Marios, Diablo 3, Skyrim, which is a huge video game release just a couple years prior to Grand Theft Auto 5. But 70 million copies have been sold for GTA 5, which is it's remarkable, absolutely remarkable.
Crazy
how much that game it still sells today.
Right. I just bought it.
Yeah,
I just bought it for PS4.
Exactly. It's remarkable how much it does sell, and to kind of tie it back into the conversation we had, whether or not Xbox, PlayStation. I mean, PlayStation 4 versus the Xbox One, widely is considered probably the edge towards PlayStation. A lot of people considered it, better graphics right away, for strictly gaming.
Yep.
Whereas the Xbox One, they kind of introduced it as like a multi-use thing. They wanted that to not really replace, but throw that into like your home entertainment system where you could control your TV from it.
Yeah.
You've got different applications like YouTube, Netflix, and a couple other things, like for us wrestling fans, the WWE Network you can put on that. But, now that everybody's kind of gotten past that, kind of definition of what the Xbox One is, strictly on gaming, I do prefer the PlayStation better just because you can notice a difference in the graphics.
There definitely is, yeah.
You can notice it. And maybe it's because I've been gaming for so long in my lifetime, whereas if you just take a person, off the streets and say, hey, you don't play video games, which picture's better, this or this? And maybe they won't be able to tell the difference, but, playing GTA 5 as heavy as I did on Xbox to then going to play it as heavy as I did on PlayStation, you can definitely tell a difference.
Yeah, you can. And obviously, when we went to CJ's all the time, we would play NHL on PS3.
Yeah.
And
which was horrible.
Which was, but when I compared it to us having the, because it was the PS3, Xbox 360 at the time, PS4 and Xbox One wasn't out. Seems like a long time ago.
I know.
Comparing the two, there wasn't that much discrepancy between the gameplay and how the feel is, but from PS4 to Xbox One, as far as like playing NHL and skating and gameplay, and just feels smooth. I don't know how to explain it. It just feels smoother on PS4, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does, and it'll that gap will close, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Xbox is working on some project called like Xbox Scorpio now, which is supposed to be a little bit more powerful than what the PS4 is. So I'm sure it won't be long before the PlayStation and the people at Sony are working on something to kind of even it out. But I mean, Xbox, they've got to do something, because as far as the console wars is concerned, and there are a lot of people out there that are PC only, computer only. It's unfair to count them into this discussion because obviously people who game on PC, that's such a far superior form of gaming. There's so many different things you can do with mods, so many different things you can do with just everything in general. So strictly as far as like a console war goes, I think right now this generation is more for the PlayStation 4, but I think once this next little series of an Xbox One comes out, the Xbox Scorpio is what it's called versus the PlayStation. I think they're working on something called like the Neo or something like that. We'll see how close that gap is there, but as far as strictly console goes, for now, I mean it's all PlayStation 4 with good reason.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously both systems are very obviously the graphics look amazing on both systems. They are next gen systems after all. But it is almost like splitting hairs a little bit, but you can definitely feel it as someone who plays on both. And we have both, like we both just said too. You can definitely feel the difference between the two of them. Some games, like you said, you know, when you play Call of Duty Online, you play it on Xbox because that's where everybody is. You know what I mean? Like, so some games are better off played on this system compared to that system. And honestly, the reason I bought PS4 in the first place was because Xbox doesn't have a baseball game.
Yeah.
Which when it gets to March and April, you're kind of like, I want to play some baseball here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was a big factor too as well. And who knows if Xbox will ever go back to having the 2K baseball games. It's kind of crazy that a system does not have a baseball game. Little crazy if you think about it. But yeah, I don't know. I like the comparison. I like how PS4 feels, and it's just a whole lot funner. But like I said, we were kind of starting off with GTA, and I'm kind of looking up some stories right now. Back in about like August, July, or whatever, all the news websites, all the gaming websites were talking about how GTA Story Mode DLC got scrapped because they wanted to focus more online. And they're getting some uproar by a lot of fans saying that, okay, we're ready for the story to take off, like a part 2. And the part 2, there are rumors that they have 70% of the voice recording and the movement, the motion sensor stuff and stuff like that, motion capture thing they called it. So they have worked with these actors, and they've teased, like Ned Luke, who plays Michael. He's dropped a couple teases, and one other point that they pointed out, they just not too long ago, but I believe it was September, they just did a convention, you know, like those gaming conventions, and they had like a big bunch of fans talk to all the fans, and people are saying 3 years later, and you're doing a convention, so it kind of raised a lot of eyebrows, like something's going on here, and you go on these guys' Twitter pages, the guy who played Franklin, Michael, and Trevor, they're getting a lot of questions left and right, like, okay, you guys just did a convention, like, why the convention? This is a little fishy. You guys, something's going on here.
Yeah, and who knows what it'll be.
Yeah, right.
It's weird with Grand Theft Auto because Grand Theft Auto really is one of those series of video games where there are so many rumors.
Yeah, right.
So many rumors about what could be happening because I remember right around the same time in August when we had thought about like, oh, where's this DLC coming from?
Sure.
Or where's this DLC at? People then thought about, okay, well, is there another game in the works then? You know, is Grand Theft Auto 6 a little bit closer than we think it might be?
Yeah.
You know, and there were rumored locations with something overseas like in Tokyo, which they scrapped. You know, I think London or somewhere there in the UK or in England like that is another location that a lot of people would be interested in checking out.
For sure.
Which, I mean, me personally, like I would be interested in something like that. I mean, it'd be completely different than playing a game based in Los Angeles or New York or Miami. Then, you know, things started going around like, okay, well, then there might be something with an open world, or an even more open world where you're kind of based in different cities. You know, so you'll have a game that includes Los Santos or Los Angeles, Liberty City or New York City, and then Vice City, obviously, in Miami.
Yeah.
You know, and whether they put a location somewhere maybe in Texas, a big city in the Midwest like St. Louis.
Yeah,
now that was always a dream.
That was
always a dream. Was,
yes.
How sweet would that be if there was a GTA here?
Yeah.
Where you drive up to your house, there's you know, like just your house and stuff like that. But, you know, I mean, a bigger city in the Midwest, Chicago, St. Louis, maybe the Twins, you know, maybe the Twin Cities if we could have our own, you know,
for sure,
our own kind of throne
way
for
of
it. Exactly. So, you know, it's no one really knows at this point.
No,
and
it's all hearsay.
And Rockstar does things well because, you know, they kept things real hush on the new Red Dead Redemption that's coming out this year with Red Dead 2, which has been another Rockstar project that everyone's clamored for. And maybe that's a reason why there was convention for it. Maybe that's a reason why they were so hush hush or scrap their DLC, is because they said, okay, well, we're gonna go try for another for another Red Dead game.
Yeah.
But going back a little bit, kind of what prompted this discussion of Grand Theft Auto was we talked a little bit about it when we were going to get Canes, about that thing where they mentioned, kind of what would you want as a fan? Do you want DLC for the story? Do you want DLC for online? Where do you want it to come for most?
Yeah.
I think, like you said, people clamored for regular gameplay, for story mode gameplay.
Yep.
And I think the reason for that, and I said it in the car and I'll say it here too, is because I think we were promised DLC for the story mode and we just never got it.
Yeah.
They've added a couple of things here and there, but nothing real impactful, where they've changed a whole hell of a lot online. They've introduced motorcycle gangs. You can now run your own company. The online
heist was a big thing when it came out.
The heist was an amazingly big thing when it first came out.
Yeah.
It still is pretty big now that it's out, but there's just so many ways to make money now online. But the one thing that still irritates me is they still haven't opened the fucking casinos.
Do that.
That's the one thing.
Yes.
I don't know how, and maybe there's a reason for it, but it's Grand Theft Auto. Like, you can't say, oh, we can't because it influences gambling. Like, coming from the creators of a video game who have digital strippers in a strip club that are naked. Like,
you beat the piss out of them.
Like, you can't tell me that it wouldn't be fun to have an open casino where you can go gamble away your money, and, it may be a way for them to make money because you get all those saps that buy those Game Shark cards.
Yes.
Here, I'm going to drop $100 real money to get, $8 million, I think is what it transfers to in-game money.
Yeah.
Well, then they go burn that in the casinos, and it's like, okay, well, then they got to get more. So it's like, I've wanted them for so long to open the casino. We've talked about it every time we play GTA, that how fun would it be to have an open casino to gamble in.
It'd be sweet because, a lot of people would do that for sure. The thing about the whole, we talked about it in the car too, for the story mode DLC, if they're going to add story mode DLC, and if it's only 3 new missions, don't even bother.
It's got to be significant.
It's got to be significant. It's got to be a whole nother GTA with these same cast of characters. But the whole rumor here, I'm doing the finger quotes here, the whole rumor is the fact that it would continue off after, this is getting really nerdy on it, but the last mission is, A, you kill Michael, B, you kill Trevor, or C, you kill the people who are trying to kill them, and you team up. And if you leave off of C, that's where the story mode would leave off, and you have the second chapter. And I think it's smart, actually. As much as I wanted GTA 6, I think it's smart to add a whole big GTA 5 DLC while you can, if I'm the owners of Rockstar, because there's so much untapped potential left in the world that they created that is Los Angeles. They have the desert and stuff like that too as well. The map is so big; you can do so much with it still, and I think it'd be almost like a waste to just be all right, time to move on to the next one, because you have so many resources for GTA 5 to even be even bigger and better.
Well, and maybe that's why that you start seeing things like this. Like GameSpot just ran with an article that there's a modding team for PC called Open IV, and they've added Liberty City to GTA 5. So maybe that's what they do. Maybe the creators of Rockstar say, okay, well, people obviously don't want to be limited to Los Santos.
Yeah.
So maybe we will add Liberty City, and then maybe that's where part 2 of the story takes place. Maybe instead of GTA 6, it's GTA 5.5 or GTA 5 version 2, where you get the same 3 cast of characters. They move and they shift their focus from, the drug smuggling and all that from Los Santos, and they go through Liberty City.
Yes.
Because I'd be game for these 3 characters to stick together.
I love these 3 characters, man.
It's a great 3 characters.
Yeah.
Los Santos was fun.
Yes.
We as nerds played through all 3 of the final mission just to see what happens.
Had to go through.
Just to see what happens. And I think, and if you're anything like me, I think I left it off as where all 3 are still alive.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't kill off anybody like that.
Yeah.
But also in the sense I haven't touched online really since I shifted my focus to, or I haven't touched story since I've shifted my focus to online.
Sure.
But I would say right now, without a shadow of a doubt, should they introduce Liberty City as kind of where that story takes place again, there's no doubt in my mind that I would grind through it like the original.
With the graphics that they have right now.
It'd be
putting
insane. I mean,
Liberty City into it.
Grand Theft Auto 4 with the graphics how it was, Liberty City looks sweet. And I think we've seen the video many times, and I think I've shown you the video too. The guys who went through and they made the Sopranos intro. The opening video for the Sopranos they did on GTA 4.
Yeah.
And it mimics the opening video for The Sopranos.
Yeah.
And it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And that was with, Xbox 360 graphics. Imagine it now. It would literally be like watching a movie with the way that 4K video is going.
Right.
If you make it 4K compatible, it would legitimately be like watching a movie take place in New York City.
Well, and a lot of games get criticized for having story modes where it is too much like a movie, but GTA has that perfect happy medium where it's like, it is like a movie, but it's not like, okay, here's a cutscene for 5 minutes and then press X, and then next another cutscene. No, the combination that GTA has of cutscene to actual gameplay is perfect combination because they have these long movie setup cutscenes, but then you actually have like a mission where you have to, you have to fucking do something. You have to play yourself. Whereas like, I liked The Last of Us. Tyler let me borrow it, and I played the story mode for The Last of Us. Too many times though, it was kind of like really, really long cutscene, and then I'll be like, all right, let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you'd be like, tap X, and I tap X, and it'll be like, okay, here's another cutscene. Like,
yeah.
Where GTA, I think, nails it so perfectly, and it has for years. And this is why I've been such a GTA nerd, not just 5, but the whole franchise, is because how they get it down to a T where it's like a movie, but you're involved in the movie. You're like, okay, here's a 5-minute cutscene. Well, you're about to have a 5-minute car chase. Like, it just evened itself out perfectly.
Yeah, and I will say, because we talked a little bit about story mode driven games, and I've never really been a story mode driven guy. I did play through a lot of the campaigns in Call of Duty. I typically played a little bit of that before jumping online, but once I started kind of getting invested into competitive gaming, I really just kind of let campaigns and story modes kind of go by the wayside.
Yeah.
With the exception of 2 games, Grand Theft Auto and The Last of Us. The Last of Us, it's tough for me to say because I know you're such a big Grand Theft Auto fan.
Yeah.
The Last of Us by far is the single best single-player story mode game I've ever played.
That's your favorite right there?
Hands down.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
It's one of the greatest told stories, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They introduced The Last of Us 2 this year. They had a convention for it. I don't know when, or it was at the PlayStation Experience, I think is what they called it a couple of months ago, in November, I think. I don't know when a release date for it is. I think it's this year sometime, but it's going to be... I think The Last of Us 2 is going to rival the anticipation for GTA 5 when it first came out.
Yeah, because The Last of Us is
based off of just the story.
Yeah.
Because GTA 5, I don't remember if we knew we were getting online right away. I don't remember if we knew.
Yeah.
I think we knew GTA 5 was coming. We know what we're going to get with the story. Strictly based on that, The Last of Us 2 will rival how excited people were for when the GTA 5 was announced.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that you wait so long for. The Last of Us was a game that came out in 2012, 2013?
Yeah, about that.
Right around the same time as maybe the year after GTA came out. So it's been a good 4 years since The Last of Us 1 came out.
Yeah.
It originally started on PlayStation 3, was released on the PlayStation 4, kind of a remastered version. Nothing changed as far as the story, just the graphics strictly. And I think that if they tell the story the right way, the next installment could be one of the best games ever.
The Last of Us Remastered is the one that I played on PS4. Like I said, we got it from Tyler, one of our classmates, and he let me borrow it, and I played it, and the graphics were unbelievable. The story mode was very good, very solid. It is really good. I had a lot of fun playing that, and it is like it's a pretty interesting game. You probably think like, if you see pictures of it, like, oh, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, okay, some zombie type killing game.
Exactly.
It's not. It's way more than that. It's a lot of fun. It is a really good game, and I didn't know they're making The Last of Us 2. I'll have to make sure to check that out too as well. And when you brought up you brought up Red Dead 2 as well. And Red Dead Redemption, I played a little bit of the first one. I didn't do any of the story mode. It was like the same year it came out like as GTA 4, and come on,
that was a
GTA.
And think about that. That was a big year for Rockstar. I mean,
huge, man.
Grand Theft Auto 4 and Red Dead Redemption in the same year. Like, people have been clamoring for Red Dead 2 because it's essentially the Western version or the old time Western version of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
You go on bounty hunts. You make sure that certain people get killed, and you make sure you run certain, missions and stuff like that, and you ride a horse instead of a car.
Yeah.
Like that's the comparison there. I mean, I'm as equally excited for Red Dead 2 as well, because I'm kind of with you. I didn't play Red Dead Redemption a ton because I was always more of a GTA guy.
Yeah.
But I think again, if they do things the right way, it could be they could kind of bounce back and forth. A Red Dead game this year, a GTA game in a couple of years,
Sure.
then a Red Dead game again a couple years after that. Rockstar could be setting themselves up for quite some time with video games.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer yet for Red Dead, but if you haven't yet, go check it out because it looks insane.
Definitely
it's one of those
go
like
check
quick little kind of trailers where it just kind of shows what everything looks like. You don't hear any characters talking or anything like that, really. Just kind of shows you the landscape of the map and stuff.
That's a little bit how The Last of Us 2 was also.
Was it kind of?
Yep, you saw a cutscene, and it kind of started. Nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew what it was right away. But then it kept going a little bit. There was a symbol that you see a lot in The Last of Us, the original version.
Okay.
And that's when people knew, like, holy shit, this is The Last of Us 2. And then, you start hearing some music. You see Ellie. You see Joel. People have their own kind of theory about what the next one's going to be. Has Joel been killed? Is Ellie out to try and exact revenge? It's your own interpretation. No one's going to know until they play it. But it will be one of the most anticipated games of all time. Just to wrap up some of the GTA talk here, just searching for, there's a website, mobileandapps.com. Obviously, probably you take it with a grain of salt.
I just clicked on that
because
same
you're probably
one.
on Grand Theft Auto, and then some ads popped up. Grand Theft Auto 6, release date, specs, features, blah, 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 kind of all that stuff. Just run through some of these and see, like, okay, would that pique your interest as a fan of Grand Theft Auto? Because, a lot of this stuff could be coming, but it says with the beginning of 2017, Grand Theft Auto fans are given renewed hope that a GTA 6 will be released sooner, and it'll come with new gadgets, vehicles, and additions to the game. Players also are anticipating that a female protagonist will be introduced, where GTA, we've really only had male players as kind of your characters to go through. It talks a lot about setting, kind of where it'll be as far as location. Many places come into mind, like Tokyo, but they've talked about how some of the troubles with trying to get it in a place like that.
Yep.
Rockstar Games may have set aside that idea, instead could go for a similar setting to that of something like GTA Sin City, which would be interesting to me.
Yeah.
If they opened the goddamn casinos,
yeah,
and let
right.
you gamble.
You can't have a Vegas one without the casinos
absolutely
open.
Not. You absolutely could not.
Yeah.
Timberwolves just lost 112 to 105 to the Wizards. No surprise there.
Yep.
Another thing, gamers hoping maybe for a multiple place setting, or even a place where you could play from platform to platform, where players on PlayStation could play in an open world against players on Xbox or players on the computer. And there are some games now that have introduced that. Rocket League is a game that's a little bit introduced that, where you can play from PlayStation to PC or from Xbox to PC. So, a lot of these rumors you see are all taken with a grain of salt. They kind of always ask, what do you want to see in GTA 6? Right now, where we sit, wrapping this up on the Grand Theft Auto talk, what is one thing you want in Grand Theft Auto 6?
Grand Theft Auto 6, I just want to... There's so many locations I've gone back and forth. I've wanted to go back to Vice City.
Yeah, let's bounce around a couple things.
Okay.
So we'll say what location
bullet
do
points?
you want. Yeah,
okay.
We'll go a little bit bullet points. Like, what location do you want as a Grand Theft Auto fan?
Location that I've wanted for a long time was Vice City, but to go back to Vice City, you almost kind of have to keep the 80s vibe.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know if you want to go back to that again, because the Vice City fun thing about that was the 80s, like drug trade in Miami. Yep. And another one would be, like you said, like a Vegas type situation would be fun. One that we've talked about during the summer was if you could make it possibly into some like kind of like mob New York City, like Liberty City again, but like make it like
with that you'd have to go way back. Like with
right.
that, I mean, granted, I know where you're going with that, where you don't really want to go back to the 80s because we don't really know how that would go here. But the game like the Mafia 3, I played through that. Great story driven game there as well.
Sure.
They did a good job of going back, to post, World War time and fresh out of the World War. I think that would be fun going back in time. Where like, if you go back in time to like the 20s and 30s, high time for the Prohibition era, lots of drugs being run, and just like mafia and mob and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I don't think you could go wrong with that.
And the way that the people do it at Rockstar and how they develop these games with GTA, like back then, like having like a mob mentality to it. Sign me up.
I think my wish list for location, I think first would be something new.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
wherever it is.
Yeah.
Wherever it is. Whether it is a Sin City, which would be cool. I would love a location in London or the UK or something like that. Tokyo, if they decide to want to try and pick that up. I think something new in
London's
Grand
been
Theft
done.
Auto. A new location in Grand Theft Auto, I think, would be fun.
London's been, quote unquote, done before just because it was like on GTA 2, but that doesn't really count.
Right.
It's over the top, and you couldn't really see the city.
Yeah.
And with how the graphics are for GTA like 5, could you imagine GTA 6 like graphics in
it
London
would
or
be
something like
insane.
that? It'd be crazy.
And it's just weird to see like how would you where would you tie the story?
Yeah.
How would the story and all these locations? I mean, you kind of, I think the story or the location is just as big a factor as the story because you've got to have the right story that fits the location.
Yeah, right.
Like you said with Vice City, the 80s and drug trafficking, like that fit in Vice City in Miami.
Yeah.
Kind of where you're at with gang warfare and stuff like that in Los Angeles. Like you've got that in real life, so it parodies real well together.
Right.
But yeah, I would say number one, someplace new, preferably a place in the UK or, like you said, Sin City.
Yeah.
If they do go back to a location, I think I want them to go back to Liberty City. I think they could do a lot with that with modern times. So that would really be my two locations.
Yeah.
Of kind of where I'd want them to go. Whether or not they do decide to go that way, whether they, keep it or they kind of float around the idea of having multiple locations where you play one version of your story here, the next version of your story in Miami, the next version of your story in New York, kind of, kind of everywhere. Like I'd be fine with that. I want something fresh, I think. And I think GTA 5, when it came out, was definitely something fresh.
Yeah, it was something that we haven't seen before with how big the map was. And I remember we talked about how, quickly how GTA 4, the map was big and it was like, wow, this is pretty sweet. But then you come out in 2013 with GTA 5. And I remember the biggest thing that we talked about before we actually started playing was, look at how big this map is. It's insane how big the map is. It's crazy. And so, I mean, you got to think newer game, bigger map. And if they did have a way to combine, maybe add like a Vegas and keep it in the States where you have like, you still have Los Santos, you add Vegas, you add Liberty City, and you add Vice City all together in one. Oh man, that'd be insane.
I would definitely be okay having that video game be the Grand Theft Auto video game for 5 years. Because
take it.
Grand Theft Auto 4 to Grand Theft Auto 5 was 5 years. We wanted it for so long.
Yep.
But GTA 4 was a fun video game. You could live off of that for a while. GTA 5 you could live off of for a while.
Yeah.
I think the next one, should they do something like that where they go multiple locations, you definitely could play that for a couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. We'll see what happens there. I mean, you never know how long this is going to take for it to come out, especially with obviously Red Dead 2, like we talked about, is going to be coming out. So if there's any talk of GTA 6, it's going to be pushed back for sure.
Moving on here, we'll just move on a little bit, kind of dive into some sports topics. I think the big one for today, at least, PJ Fleck, the new head football coach of the University of Minnesota. He's left Western Michigan to take over this program that's, according to ESPN, or quoted from ESPN, reeling from threatened player boycott of a bowl game, as well as the handling of a sexual assault investigation. PJ Fleck, not really a household name. It was rumored that Les Miles was interested, or the Gophers were interested in Les Miles in some capacity. Fleck, now the youngest Power 5 coach in the country, at only 36 years old. He fits in with the way the Gophers are going because, Richard Pitino, 34 years old.
Yeah.
So kind of a youth movement in a way that the Gophers are going, with the exception of Don Lucia, who's been coaching for 30 years.
Yeah, right.
So quite some differences there with how they're running that. Fleck, as mentioned, 36 years old, received a 5-year deal. Will be the head coach of the school that'll pay him roughly $18.5 million. Minnesota Athletic Director Mark Coyle said today that bringing him in hopes that he is seemingly a boundless enthusiasm and helps unite a program and a school that have been fractured over the past couple of months. The one thing that I heard from Fleck a couple of different times, when he landed, he talked right away with Fox 9. He was enthusiastic. He got off the plane and walked to Fox 9 and said, "Let's talk." And he just seems like a guy who isn't going to shy away from having his name out there, and he's not going to shy away from talking to people in the public.
No.
And the one thing that I got from him that really stuck with me, and that I hope sticks with the players and sticks with players that are considering coming to the U, is that he told the players straight up, "You didn't choose me. You had no choice in me coming here. I chose you." And I think that says a lot because, there were rumors that Western Michigan was offering him a ton of money. He turned down interviews with places like Houston, Texas, and a lot of other big-name schools, but he said that his dream job, which is weird to hear somebody like this say, but he said his dream job was a school like Minnesota, a school in a Power 5 conference that has a good enough tradition. I mean, the Gophers football tradition really is one of the top in the country when you look at the past in Gophers football. And so he said that it's always been his dream as a kid to either play, which he didn't have the option to do, or coach in the Big Ten. And now he's got that chance at the helm of the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I like the signing, though. I do like the hiring of PJ Fleck because when you look at Tracy Claeys, we kind of hired him on a whim. He was the interim head coach, obviously, when Jerry Kill stepped down. So it was kind of forced into that role. And that was because, obviously Beth Getz was the interim AD. So she just kind of, settled with Tracy Claeys. And you look at Jerry Kill, he was, I believe, people were saying that he was our fifth or sixth option. He wasn't one of our top three options. Glenn Mason had a lot of success here. He actually had some pretty good years here. But we won't
mention the Tim Brewster years.
We won't mention Tim, yeah. I honestly, that's how bad it is. I didn't even think of Tim Brewster. That's how bad he was
the Brew
here.
Crew.
Yeah.
I just remember when he was brought in, he guaranteed a Rose Bowl that year.
Yeah.
And they went 1-11. And I won't lie, I owned a Tim Brewster T-shirt. It had the Gophers logo and all it was a Gopher T-shirt.
Yeah.
It had a big semi truck with the Gophers schedule, and the whole big thing was the Brew Crew. And I remember that, and I just, what a joke that guy was.
Yeah, you kind of, everybody did though. You weren't the only one that bought one of those T-shirts.
100% not.
But just looking at these these past coaches, Tim Brewster, he was a tight ends coach for the Broncos. We have a coach, finally, we have hired a coach that was a hot commodity.
Yeah.
That was a coach that over the last 3 or 4 years, I think he was at Western Michigan, has had a lot of success at Western Michigan, a school that is not going to have a lot of success in football any other years. He takes over that program. They go to the Cotton Bowl. They're undefeated. They're ranked 15th in the country. This is unbelievable to fathom for Western Michigan.
Right.
Barely lose to Wisconsin. It was 24-16. And what he brings here is the fact that this is the first time that we have really hired a coach that is it's making waves nationally.
Right.
Because he was such a big name. He made such a big name from all the success at Western Michigan. And I remember watching SportsCenter last one of these nights a few months ago. It was during the season, and Scott Van Pelt had PJ Fleck on, and PJ Fleck was just talking to him, and they're just talking football, talking about you're doing a lot of great things with Western Michigan, and that kind of exposed PJ Fleck to the national media and stuff.
Yeah.
And when they went undefeated, it was kind of like, okay, PJ Fleck now has the pick of the litter. Where does he want to go?
Yeah.
And I didn't really think my dad was talking about, we should hire PJ Fleck. I'm like, yeah, good luck. So, he's going to have all these schools going after him. Now, and it's funny how we talked about this last night. Minnesota has had a run of pretty solid coach hirings. We'll see how PJ Fleck turns out, but right now it looks solid.
Right now it does look
Boudreaux,
solid.
Zimmer, Tom Thibodeau, even though it's not working out right now, but it will work out eventually. But it's crazy.
Even if it's not the success of the coach, it's the type of coach.
Yeah, right.
It's no more of the, kind of the run-of-the-mill, we always rag on them, but the Minnesota Twins, they have Ron. The Twins, though they've been successful, not recently, but they've been successful with, only having, 2 managers in the last 30 years?
Yeah, something like that.
And Taylor,
right.
or between Gardenhire, and then back in throughout the 80s and into the 90s. But it's just, it's the way, it's the culture change, I think. It's no more of the quiet-spoken guys. Tracy Claeys was a very quiet-spoken guy. Jerry Kill was a very quiet-spoken guy. You now have a guy who will talk the ear off of the media.
Yeah.
He said today in his conference, in his press conference, his introductory one, he says, from this day forward, you will never not have anything to write. He was like, I'll give you everything you want to write stories. And as a media member, you love that because, typically you're out going to try and find your information. Now you've got it coming to you.
Yeah.
PJ Fleck has had the top, now granted, it's the MAC conference, but he's the top recruiting class of the MAC for the last 3 years. And that says something because you're still taking recruits away from this area. You're taking recruits away from, sort of out east, places like Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia.
Yeah.
And then up into the Northeast as well. I mean, you're taking recruits from these and you're building good recruiting classes. It's no surprise that they've gone to back-to-back bowl games at Western Michigan. He turned a team that was 1-11 into an undefeated regular season team that realistically could have beaten Wisconsin should they,
Right.
a couple of early mistakes, and they were down 14 points to Wisconsin. They came marching back and lost by a touchdown with a Western Michigan team against a Wisconsin team that was thought to be one of the best in the country.
Right.
After wins against LSU, they lost by, I think, a one-score game to Ohio State. They could have been Wisconsin, arguably, in the playoff.
Yeah, they could have.
And this Western Michigan team led by PJ Fleck, 36-year-old guy who will talk anybody's ear off, lost by a touchdown to Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how it kind of goes full circle because obviously PJ Fleck was I believe he was a wide receiver coach in 2009 for Northern Illinois. He was also a recruiting coordinator, whatever the title they gave him. But no, I do like the hire. And a couple of people brought it up too when the Les Miles name was being thrown around on Twitter and stuff like that was, oh no, could this be another Toby Smith situation where you bring in a guy with a huge name? But you know what? Les Miles had a lot of schools that were looking for coaches, and he's still not a coach right now. So there's something going on with Les Miles that I don't know what's going on. But I do really like the hiring of PJ Fleck because, like I said, finally it's a coach that. And I'm not saying we need all this national recognition, but we need to spice things up a little bit here at the U. It's been the only exciting times we have here at the U is with a scandal. We don't want that.
No.
It's been a boring, kind of like bland few years.
I think when I first got over here before we started recording, you mentioned it, that someone from Sports Illustrated was talking, to the media here in town saying stuff like, we don't cover national news here.
No.
There's no national coverage for college football.
Yeah.
He was like, the only time is with a scandal. He's like, we go to Montana to cover good stories.
Right.
We go to North Dakota to cover good stories with NDSU. They don't come to the Twin Cities to cover the Gophers nationally.
Never.
I think now you bring in this guy, a coach who is nationally in the spotlight. Should he come in here? I mean, this is a 9-win football team.
Yeah.
I very well think could win 9 games next year. It's just a matter of kind of the culture change. And I get it. People are upset that the way that they went about firing Tracy Claeys, people are upset. You're never going to make people happy.
Yeah.
PJ Fleck, as great as it is for his family, he's now making more money here. He's in a bigger city than Kalamazoo, where Western Michigan is. He hurt a lot of people leaving that school, but he's making a lot of people here happy by him coming here. And, there's rumors out there that, the Gophers have had their eye on PJ Fleck now for months, and who knows that maybe just this whole scandal and how Tracy Claeys handled it, maybe that's just an excuse to let him go, and it's, doesn't make his firing seem so just spontaneous, because should all this scandal stuff have been in the past and they still had their eye on Fleck, it would have been, it would have been really interesting to see how this all would have unfolded, because it's kind of like, in a way, there's always that kind of a saying where, if you're in a long-term relationship and you break it off and immediately your significant other's with someone else, like there had to have been something going on there for it to be such a quick rebound. It shouldn't be a surprise that the Gophers fired Tracy Claeys and 2 days later they hired their new head coach. And maybe there were some talks going on. Maybe it was an option for them, that developed a lot more sooner than, or a lot longer, a lot further ago than this past
just
Wednesday.
Recently. Yeah.
But again, it'll be interesting. That Rutgers game will be interesting.
Yeah, Jerry sorry, buddy. You're going to have to come back to the U of M, buddy.
Jerry Kill, now the offensive coordinator, I believe, at Rutgers.
Yes, yep.
After he says he's not going to step foot at TCF again, he's going to have to eventually when Rutgers comes to town.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been a tough situation for the Gophers, and I think with you, how you talked about how maybe we had PJ Fleck in mind for more than just a couple weeks here. It could be a couple months that we've had him in mind. And I think it's a bad situation, but I think it was kind of a way for Mark Coyle to get who he wants in here, because it's kind of like you talk about how, when Derek Falvey and those guys got brought in, Thad Levine being the GM of the Twins, like, okay, they're kind of stuck with Mauder in a way. For a year, exactly. But if Mauder, if they kind of struggle, I believe they'll probably let him go. You know what I mean?
100%.
Because a GM wants to have their own, and it's kind of like college football. An athletic director is a GM of college football or college sports,
right?
And I'm sure Mark Coyle wanted to have his own coach, and he's kind of like, okay, I'm stuck with Tracy Claeys. Stuck is a bad way of putting it, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I have Tracy Claeys.
He's not his guy.
Right, not his guy.
Tracy Claeys is not a Mark Coyle guy.
PJ Fleck is Mark Coyle's guy. And I think this was this was an opportunity where, probably a bad way to say it, but I think it might have been a way for Mark Coyle to be like, okay, maybe I kind of put it on the whole, most of it probably was because of all the suspensions and stuff like that.
Right.
His tweet defending the players and stuff like that. But on the other side of it, I think Mark Coyle was kind of like, okay, now this is my opportunity I can drop Tracy Claeys. I won't get too much flag for it because people understand it's a tough situation, and I can bring in my own guy now. And PJ Fleck's the guy, and I guess I'm excited because he's one of those, like, kind of, you don't want to bring in like an old coach. And maybe that was the deal with Les Miles, who, you have to bring an old guy in. Is he going to travel a lot to do recruiting? Probably not. But you have a young guy like PJ Fleck, who was a really good recruiter at Western Michigan, had some recruiting classes that were like stacked up with the guy on Sports Illustrated I was talking about when he was talking about he wouldn't come here for a story, but he was talking about how PJ Fleck, when he was at Western Michigan, would have a recruiting class that was almost stacked up with like an Auburn or a UCLA. That's crazy. You're at Western Michigan, and they're not like identical. There's going to be obviously some discrepancy. Their schools are much different, but the fact that you even have you're within like 10 rankings or even 20 rankings of schools like that when you're Western Michigan is pretty nice.
Yeah.
And now he has the fact that he can say, hey, Power 5, you're going to be on national TV every single week. Yep. It's a Big Ten school. Like, now you have that. I'm just excited because we get a young, thirsty coach that is ready to go out there and get as many recruits as he can. And a couple of Western Michigan players have already said that, hey, I'm going where PJ Fleck goes. So we are going to get a 3-star defensive tackle that's going to go with him. And 3-star, we'll take a 3-star defensive tackle. That's fine. We'll take that. And hopefully maybe down the line in a couple of years when he establishes a program here, we can get maybe a couple 4-stars or anything like that.
And who knows? I mean, going into next year, it was kind of a question mark on who your quarterback would be.
Yeah.
With the Tracy Claeys-led football team. Now it's, completely different. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for is change.
Yeah.
PJ Fleck said, he says everybody wants change until it changes, until something changes.
Yeah.
And I think that as a football fan and a fan of the Gophers football team, I want something different than run 70% of the time, pass 30% of the time.
Yeah.
I want it to get a little bit more evened out. I want a football team that's not built where they can't play from behind. Because the Gophers get behind quite often, but they can't play from behind because they're such a run-heavy team and they just chew clock. Whereas Western Michigan, they played kind of a quick offense, a no-huddle offense.
Yeah.
That's a lot what the Gophers are going to play next year. And we'll obviously see with where coaching staff goes. A big rumored name for his addition to his staff, his wide receivers coach from Western Michigan, is likely going to come here. He's from Farmington. He knows the area here well. Whereas a guy like Mike Sherrills, linebackers coach for the Gophers throughout the Kill regime, is a rumored name to stay.
Cool.
And to stay on board here. So it's, he said himself today that he wants to move fast with the coaching staff. He wants to get that signing day circled on his calendar and start finding recruits and finding football players to play for this team because, you've got guys who were in big spots like Mitch Leidner. Granted, he's not coming back because he's now going, maybe to the next level in the NFL. But even after they fired Tracy Claeys, where, he came out and said, they quoted him, and don't quote me on this, but it was something along the lines of like, I'd be surprised if anyone wants to play for that team anymore. And those are big words coming from a guy where they stuck with this guy, even though he struggled mightily in his 5 years of playing here.
Right.
And granted, maybe it's the guys behind him weren't the greatest, but they still stuck with him.
Yeah.
And, and PJ Fleck, he's not a typical Jerry Kill guy. He did coach under Kill for 2 years at Northern Illinois before leaving to go to Rutgers. Before taking a crack in the NFL I think he coached wide receivers for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a while. And then before taking that job at Western Michigan. But this is only his second head coaching job ever.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I think one thing that I heard a lot today that kind of reflects him is the word authentic. He's an authentic guy. What you see is what you get. He's not that passion that he shows in his interviews, that passion he shows towards his team. That's not him trying to play somebody. That's him being him.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's the biggest thing is he's not putting on a front for anybody. You know, he talked with his players today. He flew in town this morning at 8:45, 9 o'clock this morning. He was meeting with his players at noon. Whether it was all the players that were in town, he did on Facebook Live. He kind of met with everybody, was saying, look, I get it. You know, you didn't choose me. I chose you. He doesn't blame them if they don't stay, if they wanted the last regime, kind of whatever, what have you. You know, but I this first year is going to be testing the waters. We live in Minnesota. It's going to be the same. If they struggle, they're going to say fire the guy. If they succeed, they'll say, why didn't we go with him long ago?
Yeah.
You know, it's just kind of what we've come to know in Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, but it's just kind of let's just wait and see. Give him some time to get his guys here. And he could turn this program in a conference where the Big Ten West really is Wisconsin and then wide open. They could be contenders for a Big Ten title within a couple of years.
Yeah, they could, and it shouldn't be like it's not that far fetched to think that either. It's not like we're talking about like we could win the national championship. No, it's not that. We're talking about the Big Ten West here. The Big Ten West is really not that strong besides Wisconsin, and Penn State I guess had a pretty solid year, but still,
the Big Ten East is a dogfight.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an insane.
The East
conference
is obviously tougher than the West. The West, like I said, we only have really Wisconsin. But look at the teams we played earlier this year. Like we thought Penn State was going to be bad. Look at how they ended up, and we actually had a tougher schedule. We thought we might have had. It was still pretty weak, but
I think we had a tougher schedule because of how the other teams played.
Yeah,
Penn
exactly.
State was supposed to be a weaker team.
Right.
They were in the Rose Bowl. Wisconsin was supposed to be a weaker team. They were in the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah.
You know, luckily we dodged Michigan State, Ohio State. That's going to change next year. Well, I think we've got Michigan next year. We've got Michigan.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to start coming in full.
Sure.
And so it'll be interesting to see kind of what he does with his team going forward.
Yeah, and you kind of have to keep up with I mean, you're never really going to fully keep up with the Ohio States and the Michigans, but in a way you kind of have to somewhat keep up with them because Harbaugh is just establishing a kind of mindset there in Michigan and kind of establishing a program. And so is Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer has done it a little quicker. Obviously, Ohio State's had a little more success with a national championship a couple years ago. But you kind of almost have to keep up with them as well, even though, like I said, you won't do it fully. But in a way, you have to. You have to bring in a coach who is a hot commodity, and a lot of teams would have loved to hire him. But he ended up here, and I'm happy with it. And the thing is, too, if you like... So, Big Ten West, I don't have it in front of me. What is it? Wisconsin, Iowa,
Minnesota,
like Rutgers,
Nebraska.
No, not Rutgers.
No, Rutgers in the East. It's Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Indiana.
Northwestern.
I think
that's what it is. That's what it is, yeah.
6.
So, look at that.
Or Illinois and Northwestern.
Well, one of those two, yeah. Look at that. Is that really that hard? I mean, honestly.
Right. You've got one team, Wisconsin.
Right.
Like, for the next... Should PJ Fleck get guys in here to make this team competitive?
Yeah.
It should be a 2-dog fight in the West, Wisconsin and Minnesota. Nebraska's Nebraska.
Yeah, they're always pretty
Nebraska
decent.
will always be a good team. Most likely it'll be those 3 teams. I don't expect Iowa to make such a drastic change. No. I mean, Iowa should be Iowa.
Yeah.
Indiana or Illinois, whichever one of the two it is. It may be both. I honestly can't remember. I think there's 14 teams now in the Big Ten or something like that. The Big 14.
Yeah.
Well, like the Pac-12 with however many teams.
Yeah,
they've
exactly.
got.
Yeah.
But, it could be. It's wide open for the Gophers.
It really is. You just get there, get to the Big Ten championship game, and you'll see what happens. Obviously, it would be a monstrous upset if you could beat a Michigan or Ohio State because likely those two teams, they're going to be there. I mean. I know Penn State was there this year.
On a technicality.
Yeah. I mean, but don't depend on Penn State always being there. And so we'll see what happens there. But I do like the hiring. And as we kind of wrap up Gopher football talk here, I do like how the Wild are playing, my man. and I'm online right now, and I'm looking at it's crazy how right now I'm kind of checking out the Blackhawks score, and it's January because I want to catch them up in points, and so they played tonight. They're playing right now against Carolina. They're down 1-0. The Blackhawks.
Yep.
They're down against Carolina 1-0.
They lost to Carolina the other night too.
Carolina's not bad right now, man. They're playing pretty damn good.
Yeah, they lost.
Carolina, I think, beat St. Louis too.
I don't remember
4-2.
if they won. If Carolina won that game in overtime, or if it was in regulation.
I think it was in overtime. Yeah.
Yeah, which sucks because it means the Blackhawks are getting a point still.
Yeah.
But coming into tonight, the Wild 1 point behind Chicago with what 4 games in hand.
4 games in hand. Wild are obviously off right now.
Yeah.
Blackhawks are playing right now. So now we'll have 5 games in hand going into tomorrow. So even if they win, they get 2 points. We're 3 points back. Well, who cares? We're 5 games in hand.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of fun, man. There's a lot of excitement going around this Wild team, and the whole mindset coming into this year. Michael Russo from Star Tribune was talking about how, with the whole Mike Yeo regime, and I wasn't even a big Mike Yeo hater. I actually kind of liked Mike Yeo for a little bit. The thing with him is it was always like, okay, we got to get to like that 7 or 8 spot.
Yeah.
We got to keep fighting. The mindset, I know it sounds corny, but it's a mindset. The mindset with Boudreau and how they brought in Eric Stahl, and Boudreau and Eric Stahl, they talk about how they do have like the standings always posted up. Like, okay, great, we're number 2. We want to be number 1. We're gonna keep fighting for number 1.
It's funny
it's
that
a
you
completely
say that.
different mindset.
It's funny that you say that because like you said, where Yo is like cool. We make the playoffs. That's what we're shooting for. Like Boudreau, I could see legitimately being pissed if they are only like a 7th seed.
Right? Oh
like,
yeah.
I could legitimately see him being pissed because this team's not a 7th seed. Like this team very much so deserves to be where they're at in the Western Conference right now. Number 2 in the Western Conference, number 2 in the Central, obviously behind Chicago. But the most important thing is they're building themselves a cushion. The teams that are further down, I mean, you don't want to say they essentially have a playoff spot locked, but they've got to fall a far way now to not be in the playoffs.
Well, the statistic is like the teams that are set in their place in November, playoffs places, like by Thanksgiving, it's like a 90% chance that it stays almost identical to that.
Yeah.
So that's barely starting into the season, like around Thanksgiving. So you know what? I hope we get the number 1 spot. It'd be nice to have home ice advantage throughout the whole playoffs. And
it would, absolutely.
It'd be great. And obviously, the X is a tough place to play in the regular season, but to imagine if you have a home ice advantage in the playoffs, that'd be a great thing to have. But the almighty Blackhawks, the fact that we're chasing them down, and the fact that we haven't been able to beat them in the playoffs years and for a few years here. I know it's in January right now, but if like say the playoffs started right now and we had to play Chicago in the playoffs, I wouldn't be that nervous. I know Chicago's still damn good.
I wouldn't either.
But I wouldn't be like previous years. I was like, oh God, here we go.
You hope the Wild can win in 7 or in whatever.
I hope the Wild can win 2 games, if that. You know what I mean? But it's just such a different team watching. Like we talked about on the way to get our delicious Raising Cane's.
And by the way, it's not sponsored. This is just us showing our love for.
But Raising Cane's, if you want to sponsor us,
if they want to sponsor us, we'll take a sponsorship because I'll take the free food.
Yes,
we went over this before. We're both fans of food.
Yes,
we're definitely fans of food. Raising Cane's by far one of the best fast food places.
Delicious.
I don't even know if you can consider it fast food. It's fast food because it gets from the cook's hands to my hands relatively fast.
Yes.
And then you've got that drive home where it's like, God, I just want to eat my goddamn food.
Hurry up. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but like while we were driving there, we were talking about how, and I posted on Facebook last night and Twitter, last year, this team, if they fell behind 1 goal, you turn the TV off, turn to a different channel, it was over. You didn't have to check in on them because if they fell behind 1 goal, they had 4 come from behind wins last year, total 4 or 5, I think they said. We're already at about 10 or some crazy number. And so double that. And we're barely halfway through the season, had the halfway point. So it's crazy to see. And like last night against the Kings, Sharks, we fall behind 2 goals, 2-0. Like, oh, here we go. We tie it up. Like, wow.
I won't lie. I was one of those people like, oh shit.
Yeah.
You got the hangover from losing your win streak.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got, because really the last game they played was New Year's Eve, right?
Yep, it was.
It was so you
had that long layoff.
You had a long layoff prior to the Columbus game because of I think you played twice that week to extend the streak, but you had a little bit of a layoff because of Christmas. played a couple of games, lost to Columbus, who lost the other night.
Yeah.
Then you had another long break. Now you kind of go on your West Coast trip. You know, you had San Jose last night, Los Angeles tomorrow,
Yep.
Anaheim the night after, both on national TV. Yeah, I mean, watching the game, and you know, I didn't see the first probably 25 minutes of the game because my eyes, as hopefully much of American hockey fans, was glued to the World Junior Championship.
For sure.
United States took down Canada. We talked about that.
Yep.
In Canada, 4 gold medal, always satisfying.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because the best part, I know we'll get back to the Wild here in a second. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but the best part is all the Canadian fans like, yeah, you know, Canada this, Canada that.
Yeah.
And then after they lose to the United States, they all delete their tweets and pretend they don't care about junior hockey anymore because, you know, that's just kind of how they are. They're a bunch of frauds. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and the one thing I'll say is I don't know if the junior tournament will go back to like Montreal where it was because they showed there's a Twitter account, empty seats something or empty something seats or whatever, where, you know, people send them pictures and they post pictures of empty stadium seats, you know, of stuff like that. And I believe like third-party tickets for the Canada versus the Czech Republic game were going for something like $15, $20, $30, which is insane prices.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I looked at next year's prices in Buffalo, and like tournament prices are like $1,400 for the tournament, which you get a lot of hockey. You get a lot a lot of hockey, which includes next year's matchup. You know, we'll talk about that in a little bit with Canada, United States, but they had pictures of the game in Montreal, and it, no joke, looked empty. Like it had to. Montreal probably seats conservatively 18,000 fans, maybe 19,000 fans at the Bell Center. They might have been lucky to break 10,000.
Crazy. And that's, I mean, it's your game. It's your country. It's your sport, you know? And USA, man, they're catching up as far as hockey goes to Canada. And I'm not just saying that as an American, but these obviously these tournaments are much closer than they have been in previous years. When the pros get into it, when the juniors get into it, it's not just Canada running away with it anymore.
No.
USA is getting a lot of talent. We had Austin Matthews as American who drafted #1 to Toronto.
The pro game still probably is predominantly Canada because you've got so many good pros that are, you know, not younger guys. But it's like you look at some of the talent that came out of last year's World Junior Tournament. Patrick Laine from Finland. Like you mentioned, Austin Matthews. I mean, you've got so many good talent. So much good talent that came from the junior teams now in the NHL, where now they're throwing around, well, what's going to happen with the Olympics? Is the Olympics going to go back to younger kids? Is it going to go back to pro players? Is it going to stay pro players? And after watching this tournament, like, I wouldn't be opposed if it went back to younger players, you know, whereas like the junior teams that you just watched in this junior championship now play for the Olympics. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah, that'd be cool with me.
Partially because the United States keeps winning.
Yeah. And it is a little, you get a little kind of, you tense up a little bit when you have Parisi or something like that playing in this competition. Like, don't get hurt.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to happen. But no, it's fun to watch because, I mean, we got, like you said, all these American players that are really stepping up and making a big name for themselves in the NHL. Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Patrick Kane is one of the best players in the NHL, and he's from New York. So, and I mean, we should be really proud not only as a country but as a state too.
Right?
How many Minnesotans are playing hockey at a professional level?
And not only that, if you're a fan of the Wild and you had any interest in this tournament, you're extremely happy. United States with Jordan Greenway, Luke Cunnin, both in the same line. Yeah, those are both guys that belong to the Minnesota Wild, and they are absolute studs. Absolutely. Yeah. God, I got the Russian kid's name. Alex,
I always forget it. I know it's like Kaprizov.
I think it's Alex Kirilov or something.
It's something
Kirilov or it's Kirill or something.
I just had it
can't remember his name, but he was the tournament leader in goals. Yeah. In goals, like, I mean, he's still a little bit further away than I'd say a guy like Jordan Greenway is, and a guy like Luke Cunnin is. Luke Cunnin, of course, has to play at Wisconsin, which is unfortunate. Yeah, but
the thing I'm talking about that Russian guy. What's crazy about him? Let's call him that Russian guy. That Russian guy.
I'll look up his name so we don't have to refer to him as the Russian guy.
But not only is he playing well against these teams in junior leagues, but I mean he played in the KHL too, which is Russia's NHL essentially, and he's doing very well in that too. So I mean, Look, we got a lot of talent to be proud of, and when when we heard about these Coils and these Granlunds and all these young players getting called up, the Zuckers, the Scandal, whatever, Spurgeon, so on and so forth, we thought that maybe after that there wasn't much. That's what we're all been told. Like, there's not much in our system after that.
Right.
But then you look at the juniors, like, well, it's a different story here. You have like Jordan Grew, like you said, is a stud. Joel Eriksson, he could have played this year, but he went back to Finland. And so we'll see what happens. There's a Finland. Who's he play for? Joel Eriksson. Is he Finnish? Swedish. That's what it is.
And he played. He had 5, 6, 7, 8 games, something like that.
And he was good in those games too. But
we're looking for Kirill Kaprizov.
There you go. That's what it is.
Name.
Yeah.
He had 13 points. He was the tournament leading scorer. Something like 9 goals and a couple of assists. Or I just skipped off it, but yeah, he was the leading point scorer in the tournament itself for Team Russia, which didn't have the kind of placing that they, I think, wanted to have. But the United States played a couple of tough games. They took down Russia in a shootout.
Yep.
Troy Terry scored 2 goals in the shootout against Russia. And by the way, a shootout should not determine a gold medal. And I'm saying that now, even as we won.
Yeah.
The United States won the tournament. I said that, and I made sure when I tweeted out, made sure I said it there.
You're right.
Whether or not the United States wins or loses, a shootout should not determine and should not ever determine a true champion. I get it. The players were completely gassed. You start at the end of overtime. They were so gassed. They might not have even made it another period, honestly.
Yeah.
But there's no way that a game like that can end in a shootout. Not a chance.
It's funny you bring up the gas part too, and I completely agree with your take about how you can't end that gold medal game in a shootout.
But we'll take it because
we'll take it. We'll take the gold medal. But the thing you talked about too is how gassed they were, and how many minutes is it in an NHL overtime period? Is it like 5?
It's 5 minutes now. If it's in the playoffs, it's 20.
Okay, yeah, playoffs goes back to regular continuous OT.
Yep.
Which is obviously great. That's what you want.
Yeah.
But so 5 minutes in a NHL regular season game of OT, and then you go to a shootout if you don't score in that period. This USA-Canada game was a 20-minute overtime period with not much rest in between third and overtime period.
No, because there's no TV timeouts in overtime.
So you got gas.
Realistically, continuous play.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, you have players interchanging and you have all these line switches and stuff, but you're tired, man. You're gassed. I got exhausted watching the damn thing.
I know.
Let alone being out there. That's got to be a whole nother level of stamina building. But, I'm glad we got the gold medal. Like you said, it should not be decided from a shootout.
No.
Should have been a continuous OT. But then you factor in, like you said, the
health
20-minute
20-year-old kids.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
And just it was insane. It's one of my favorite tournaments every year.
Yeah.
Because it is an every year thing. And it's fun to watch because you get two sides of it. You get the United States was good. They were in the gold medal game, obviously. They're typically, later on they're typically playing in the later games.
Sure.
Because they usually make it through pool play. But it's like, then you've got a team like Finland. Finland won the tournament last year. They had to play in a relegation tournament against Latvia, where if they would have lost a 2 out of 3 series, they don't play next year. They play in like the Series B next year, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
That's like saying, okay, well, we'll take our Super Bowl champion and they don't participate in the NFL next year. It's insane.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's it'd be like saying taking the Super Bowl champion not participating in the playoffs at all, even if their record was good. Because the Finnish team is a damn good hockey team.
Yeah.
They just didn't show up.
Right.
They suffered the effects of losing guys like Patrick Laine to the NHL.
Yeah.
Because he played for that team last year. So it's a fun tournament to watch when you're winning. It's an awful tournament if you're losing, like it was for Finland. Finland did win 2 out of those 3 games. I think they swept both games against Latvia. So they will be returning next year to the World Junior Championship, which is going to be held in Buffalo, which will be fun.
It'd be nice to have it back in the States.
Yeah, and the one cool thing is that USA Canada every year is New Year's Eve. It's kind of been it's kind of a growing tradition. Next year, USA versus Canada in the 2018 World Junior Championship will be played outside. at Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo.
That's sweet.
Which is going to be insane.
Awesome. Great idea. Great concept for that.
It's an insane idea. I don't know how much more the tournament's going to be played there. I think it's just that game is the only outside one, which you could also kind of maybe not like, but at the same time, it is a pool play game. So, really that's not like, if it was the championship, maybe you say, no way, because, the effects of the weather can change the game. It all has an effect. You want it as neutral of a setting as possible in the arena. But no, by far, if it's just a regular pool play match outdoors, I'm all for it, just to see what kind of
100%. That's such a cool concept to do, especially Ralph Wilson Stadium, which is a pretty sweet stadium. I like it in general.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if you're a Minnesotan, if you're an American Minnesotan hockey fan, you're pretty happy right now. You're in a good spot.
Yeah, I'd say that. But, you've got great high school hockey at all levels. You've got a college hockey team that's been playing decent. They won the Mariucci Classic, which, whatever. They kind of get a decent team and then a couple of not so great teams.
Like Mercyhurst and stuff like that.
Mercyhurst, and stuff like that. So you've got a hockey program that hopefully is making that turnaround to get back to where it was, when we were younger.
Yeah.
You've got a pro team that can't seem to lose.
Yeah.
And that, can't really ever be counted out.
No.
And you've got a national juniors team that just brought home the gold from Canada. So if you're a hockey fan living in this area, you're right.
Yeah,
all is pretty good.
You gotta like it, and obviously as the season goes on further, we'll dive more into it. Obviously,
absolutely.
But I'm gonna spring a topic on you. I didn't bring this up before the podcast. Usually we talk about what topics we're gonna talk about.
Yeah.
Did you watch UFC 207 at all?
I did. I did a little bit. I had to work that night. I got home in time for the Ronda fight, and I think I was also home in time for the Garbrandt fight as well. Like
sure.
The end of that. But the earlier in the card, I didn't really see that much of. But I did see those two fights.
Whew, man.
Ronda's done. She'll never fight again.
Ronda's done. And Amanda Nunes,
no one's going to beat her.
Besides Cyborg, and I'm going to be stealing a couple of Joe Rogan takes in the Joe Rogan podcast here because he lays it out so simply, which has made me more interested in the UFC by listening to that podcast. But Amanda Nunes is the hardest hitting, besides Cyborg, is the hardest hitting woman fighter there is right now in UFC. It's not even close.
You could see it. You could see it when she fought Ronda. Ronda took one quick jab to the face and was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what that feels like. And then it was over after that.
Yeah.
Ronda, though, everybody, I think the thing with Ronda Rousey is she caught the loss to Holly Holm.
Yep.
And her mystique was gone.
Yeah.
She no longer was the baddest female on the planet because she'd been beat.
Right.
And she had been exposed. And her coach is a complete idiot.
Her coach is getting Edmund. I can't pronounce. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name.
Yeah,
but he is getting a lot of flack, as he should, because first of all, here's what they're talking about in that podcast I was talking about, and they dove into it. This is all going to tie in. The first thing they talked about is how all of these promos, and they didn't show Amanda Nunes. Like, okay, we get it, Ronda Rousey's coming back, but hey, Amanda Nunes is a pretty big beast, and she's a champion right now, and she's one of the best fighters in the game. You're not even mentioning her. Second of all, when they were showing these promos of Ronda Rousey working with her coach, it was her just kind of jabbing with some pads, and that was about it. And Eddie Bravo, who works at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and he's one of the best jiu-jitsu trainers right now, and he's been training MMA fighters for a long time. And he was talking to Joe Rogan. He was talking about how if you're setting up a promo, he's like, she was doing like boxing stuff, like showing how good her punches are and stuff. Is that when she was doing her promo stuff with her trainer, she should have been doing like some like judo, like grappling techniques. That's a strong game, like show off that stuff. He's like, I know it sounds small and subtle, but it actually kind of matters.
Oh yeah.
And her coach and her mom hates her coach too. That's the thing. Her mom knows a lot about fighting. She was a fighter herself.
Yeah.
But the coach, Edmund, whatever his last name, starts with a T. Ronda Rousey doesn't have any stand up.
That's the problem is she's got no stand up. She can't box, but he has her convinced that she's a good boxer.
That's the thing.
And she's not.
She's not. And you saw that against Holly Holm, and you definitely saw it against Amanda Nunes. And one of the other things you're talking about that coach too was how Travis Brown was one of the top fighters in the UFC. Like he was like the next up and coming, big thing. and he was at a few other gyms, and he decided to sign on with Edmond because he went out with Ronda Rousey, their boyfriend and girlfriend, for a while. And
I think they still are, aren't they?
They might be, actually. You're right. They still are. So he signed on with that coach. And Joe Rogan and Brendan Schaub, former fighter, were talking about how it went downhill from there. Like, he looked so fluid, and he was like one of the top guys in the business, like upcomers. And then when he signed with Edmond, he said he really really still, really like he didn't have a lot of flexibility and movement in the octagon, and his career just never shut off after he signed with Edmond. And he's getting destroyed by coaches, and probably rightfully so, because how do you not? How do you?
Well, he'll. I don't think he'll coach anymore. He won't coach again if Ronda doesn't fight. I mean, he won't coach anyone notable.
No,
because they'd be foolish to go with a guy who says, "Oh, you're good, Travis. You're a good sprinter."
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
You know, you're an awful coach if you tell somebody that you're good at something they're not. Like,
right.
Work on it. Find somebody to help her work on her stand up. Like that's. It's a shame that the fight ended how it did.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think she was unconscious standing up.
Oh, she was.
100% she was.
People are giving crap to Herb Dean too for stopping the fight. He should have. He should have stopped the fight.
She was going to get murdered.
Amanda
Nunes was going to murder her with her tree trunk arms.
Yeah.
I think, what did Joe Rogan say? Telephone pole arms, I think is how he referred to it or something like that. He's like, she's got fucking telephone poles for arms.
Hits like a dude.
Yeah.
That's what they're talking about too. She hits like a fucking man. And the thing about that too, like you're talking about the sprinting analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so say if I was sprinting against Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna be like just obviously the margin between Nunes and Rousey is not that large, but you get my point. Say I'm racing against Usain Bolt or some world class sprinter. Now, if I had a trainer come in and say like if I could trip Usain Bolt right off the get go, that's legal. I can do that. Would I do that, or would I just sprint with him? I'd probably try and trip him, so I could beat him to a finish line.
How far of a head start would you have to get to maybe be?
I would need to trim bad.
If Usain Bolt said, "I'll give you 60 yards,"
yeah.
So you're running 40 yards, he's running 100 yards. Who wins that race?
You
think Usain Bolt still wins?
Oh yeah,
Usain Bolt beats me 100%.
Oh, for sure, me too. And you saw that in our baseball years. Yeah. But no, what I was gonna say is if there was an option where I could just trip him off the get go, that'd be my best chance. Well, it kind of ties into an example of how Edmond coached Ronda. Edmond was focused so much, and he's not a boxing coach. He's not very good with boxing. And he was trying to instill all these boxing movements with Rousey, when all in all, she should have just stuck with, the ground game and grappling, which she always does. And how I'm tying into that meet and Usain Bolt thing is, I'm not going to beat Usain Bolt at his own game. Rousey was not going to beat Amanda Nunes in stand-up. So you had to go in and take her down as best as you could, and she was just trying to stand up with her. Like, what are you doing?
I think the problem was
she got clicked pretty early too.
Yeah, that first opening jab, and then there was a quick combination that followed that.
Yeah,
it was like a left jab, and then like a quick 1, 2, 3, and I think then, like you could see it right away, like she's not in it.
Yeah,
and she didn't want to be there, and I think that it was because of that she realized, okay, well, there's no chance that she's taking. If she wasn't hit those first 4 times like that, it may have gone a different way with her being able to take her down, because Ronda really has only ever had one thing: take her down, put her in an armbar, and break her arm. Like that's it. That's what Ronda Rousey and her career has been made.
She'll never beat you standing up.
Been made from. Exactly. She'll never beat you standing up. But I think that because of those first couple of strikes, because of those first couple of hits that landed from Nunes, that was that. I mean, It says something when Amanda Nunes kind of comes up and walks through what the women's division was.
Yeah.
Walks through Miesha Tate, walks through Ronda Rousey. I mean, Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey, that was the best female rivalry that put women's fighting on the map.
Yeah.
That's what introduced women's fighting in the UFC, was Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate. And Amanda Nunes walked through both of them, and I don't know when she will get beat. I don't know when she'll be beat. I don't know. Amanda Nunes is the new Ronda Rousey. She's this next era's Ronda Rousey, because she may never be beat.
She's badass. And the thing with and look, I know we're kind of piling on Ronda Rousey right now. She's gonna be fine. She's gonna be fine.
She collected $3 million. She's gonna go to WrestleMania.
There you go. She's gonna be fine.
She'll be fine.
And with Amanda Nunes too, and with the whole Ronda Rousey fight, obviously it wasn't even close. And Ronda Rousey kind of got almost, and I saw people say she got kind of CM Punk. She did a little bit. She didn't even last as long as CM Punk did. And but when I was listening to obviously like the Joe Rogan podcast, he was talking about how he talked to Mike Tyson's trainer, and Mike Tyson got knocked out by Lennox Lewis towards the end of his career, and he tried to come back like even like almost like a year later. It just didn't work because he said when you get hit that hard in the head, people see on TV like you get back up, she walks out, you're like, oh, she's fine. No, you get headaches for months, and you're never the same for like months, and that could have been also a factor. I know it's been a year since that Holly Holm fight, but it might have taken her a long time to start recovering.
She couldn't eat.
Couldn't eat an apple, she said. Yeah,
she was like eating out of a straw.
Yeah,
and it was like my cousin who was real big into UFC. He made the joke. He was like, "Yeah, that first jab," and she was like, "Ronda wasn't thinking about the fight. She was thinking about sucking food out of a fucking straw."
Yeah,
like,
no kidding.
And what that was like, and that like because realistically, that's what it was like. I mean,
yeah,
like because she talked about it when she lost to Holly Holm. She like openly talked about she thought about killing herself.
Yeah, which
is insane. But it's like when you're raised a certain way. You've never been beat really in anything you've ever done.
Yeah.
To finally lose at the age of 20, what is she, 26, 25?
Right now?
Yeah, or is she young?
No, she's 29. Or maybe, I don't know. I think she might be 28.
Mid to late 20s, whatever.
But still, you're close. I mean, you're very close.
Right. You catch your real first loss in your mid to late 20s. Like that does a lot for your psyche.
Oh, yeah.
You had a lot of time off to train. You had a lot of time off to try and get your mind right, but taking a loss like that, I don't think you ever fully get your mind right again like that because I mean, she remember what it was like to get hit by Holly Holm, who's a world-class boxer in and of herself.
You're right.
Whereas she catches the first couple of jabs from Amanda Nunes and she immediately remembers what it was like. She immediately flashes back to, holy shit, I'm about to get my face pounded in.
The old term deja vu all over again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's, it's a shame because the one thing that I saw a lot of people saying is without Ronda Rousey, there is no women's division in UFC. And they're absolutely right.
100%
That's
true.
why people shouldn't rag on, they shouldn't rag on Rousey. And they even talked to Amanda Nunes after she had won the fight and she went over and said something to Rousey and no one knew what she had said, but they asked her after. And, Amanda Nunes, kind of, one of those backhanded things, your backhanded jokes is like, I'm here because you did what you did, but it's time for you to go do something else. And she's absolutely right. Ronda Rousey should take some time off, take some time away from UFC.
Yeah.
And then go decide to do something else.
You go.
Whether it be the wrestling route, whether it be the movie route, TV route, maybe she's an analyst somewhere, maybe she's a coach somewhere, she should not fight again. Because
which if she goes to the WWE, she might not be the only women's fighter going to WWE. We all know that. I mean, Paige Van Zandt has been asked about it so many times, so we'll know. Who knows of that? But the other fight, the other two fights in the bantamweight division between T.J. Dillashaw and I think it was Jonathan Lineker. He's a Brazilian. T.J. Dillashaw dominated, and he had another UFC bantamweight fight between Cody Garbrandt and Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz has been just a fucking stud. Cody Garbrandt made him look like he was fighting me or something. It was crazy. Like it was so one-sided. Cody Garbrandt he's undefeated right now in the UFC, and he's one of these young up and coming stars, man.
Yeah, and what they say he's one of the fastest rising, fastest. Yeah, I think he was what 8th or 9th in the rankings when he got the title fight. They had to like bump him up to 56 so he didn't look so out of place.
Yeah, and he dominated Dominic Cruz, and Dominic Cruz is one of the best of all time.
And I'm not a Garbrandt fan.
Yeah,
I'm just not. Just something about him.
I love watching that fight, man.
There's just something about him that I just don't like.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. I'm not like real super familiar with his backstory. I know the whole thing with, I don't know when it was, but he was introduced to that cancer survivor.
Yeah,
the Maddox survivor, kid. The Maddox kid.
Yep.
And and I get all that, and I can respect him for that, and kind of keeping all of that together and saying like, hey, when I walk out for my title fight, like I want you there. When I win the title, I want you to be there, with me for that.
Yeah.
And I can respect that. But there's just something about him that I just don't like.
Is it the cockiness?
I think so.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I like the Diaz brothers. And the Diaz brothers are as fucking cocky as they come.
I like the Diaz brothers. I like Conor McGregor. I'm one of those guys, I actually do like Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
I do like Garbrandt, like I said, because they make it like They just make it fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun regardless. But like when they get started in like hockey, because you can say what you want about Conor McGregor, but now that Ronda Rousey is on the back burner, this is Conor McGregor's game, and he can fucking demand anything he wants.
He can. But the only difference is he does have that one loss looming also to Nate Diaz, where it's, it's sure it's a loss outside of your division. It's not a title fight. It's whatever. You lost to a guy who weighs more than you, which is unfair. And I know that, going back, we're going to go back to Joe Rogan a ton while we do this show.
Yeah.
Not just tonight, but forever.
It's a great podcast.
We're going to go back to Joe Rogan. And he said he pitched the fight, Nick Diaz coming back.
Older brother coming into the mix.
And now that would be fun.
Yes.
Older brother coming back, hasn't won a fight since 2011, but he comes back and, no joke, Nick Diaz could probably beat Conor McGregor.
He could.
And I think he would. And it's, that would be a fight I'd pay for just because, you've got older brother, talks just as much shit as younger brother.
Yeah.
Going against Conor McGregor, who, win or loss, will talk shit no matter what.
Yeah.
But, they talked about a lot of the problems with that is, Nate Diaz wants to fight again, but he wants, 20 million or whatever. He says they had talked about the problem with that, and that, UFC, they open the door and they, their door revenue is like $100 million. They said there's only been 3 fighters that have done that: Brock Lesnar, Ronda Rousey, and Conor McGregor.
Yep.
The problem is if you get $100 million at the door and you're paying one fighter $20 million, that's not really a lot of money. Now, okay, for a company that just sold for $4 billion, it's not a lot. For you and me, it's a ton of money. But for a company that just sold for $4 billion, you're giving away 20% of your earnings to one fighter. That's not really that great, and that's no go.
Well, and the thing is, Conor McGregor too has been kind of like, hey, you know what? You want me to fight? You better pay me more. He actually kind of wants a stake almost. It seems like in the UFC because it's his game right now. There's no other big. There's a lot of big. There's stars in the UFC, but there's no one as big as him.
There's stars, but there's no superstars.
Superstars. He's a superstar, and the thing with the whole Nick Diaz possibly fighting him, that'd be kind of fun to see that. The thing that Joe Rogan said, respect. The reason the Conor McGregor got more respect than Ronda Rousey is Ronda Rousey kind of had this year off where Conor McGregor got beat and he went right back in it. He's like, I want him again. He didn't waste any time. And him and I always get it mixed up. Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz.
Yeah, Nick Diaz is the one that hasn't won in
hasn't fought. Yeah, and he got back in the octagon. They fought, and he won the second time, or even won. And I know that if they want to do it again, because Conor McGregor wants $20 million, like you said, wants $20 million, and Nate Diaz is like, I want $20 million too. Okay, you're not going to get $20 million. It's not going to happen. Because if you think, okay, so if you get 1 million pay-per-view buys at $60 a pop, so that's $60 million. So you give $20 million to McGregor and $20 million to Diaz. That's $40 million right there just for the fighters. Like that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But the craziest thing they brought up on that podcast though was the fact that Conor McGregor's fights have brought in more money than any fights combined in 2015, or 2016 I think it was. I think it was 2016. But so Conor McGregor's pay-per-view fights on his own brought in more money than any fighter's UFC pay-per-views altogether. It was crazy, man.
Yeah, I don't know why. And I don't know how accurate that is because you figure how can you differentiate just McGregor's fights bringing in a certain amount of money rather than other pay-per-views in whole, or maybe do they mean just the cards that he's on?
Well, here I'll pull it up right now because I remember.
Because I don't remember. I don't know how you can differentiate. I think I know what I think I know.
Well, you just take the money. You just look at what card McGregor was on, take the money from that, and then you. But I know what you mean, though.
Right?
Yeah.
But now to the defense of that, McGregor's been on some good cards.
Yeah,
he's been on cards,
very good cards,
and I'm not saying that those other cards would have. Not been carried, or I'm not saying those other cards would have not been nearly as strong without McGregor, but was he was supposed to be on the 200 card. He wasn't, but he was on the post was the oh God, I can't even remember now. The first Nate Diaz fight, was that 201 or was it was before 200, right?
Yeah, I can't remember what.
I think it was before 200. So regardless, you're fighting a rematch for Conor's real big his first real big loss since he's kind of become king of the UFC
Sure.
in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know. Conor McGregor could ask for what he wants, and they're gonna have to give it to him. You know, he says he wants 10 months off or whatever it was. So immediately they're now putting in an interim 155 belt, I think.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
It's like Joe Rogan made a joke about that they're just handing out interim fights now. Interim belts everywhere.
Right.
It's like, but you have to try and do something to survive Conor McGregor not being there, because the new ownership, they're now $4 billion in the hole. You got to make that money back somehow.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't remember who said it. I don't remember if I heard it from one of my cousins who were big into UFC, or if I heard it on someone's podcast or someone's show, but they said that the UFC should stop making fights. They should let Vegas decide the fights. And I think I have to agree, because you have so many fights that are so odds based one way or the other. Whereas if UFC starts paying their fights, they're going to put fights together that not only benefit them as far as the close odds, but, you know, they're going to put fights together that people want to see.
Yeah, right. And what I want to see, and what kind of is the dream matchup here on another big star, is Tyron Woodley. It's been, you know, he had a mix up with Michael Bisping. I
fucking hate Michael Bisping.
That'd be a fun fight to watch.
There's nobody in the U.S. There's nobody on the planet that I hate more than Michael Bisping.
He's a cocky motherfucker. And if Tyron Woodley fought Michael Bisping at a catch weight, like just a different weight, that'd be, I mean, that's what they've been talking about. That'd be fun. Another one is people are throwing out the idea of Tyron Woodley fighting Conor McGregor. Oh my God, dude. Because, I mean, they talked about how UFC 208's card is terrible, man.
Yeah, they said it was like comparable to like a Fox Fight Night.
Yeah,
card.
that's because they pulled it up on the big screen on the podcast, and they're like, "Oh, it's a fight night," and they're like, "Wait a minute,
no, that's
UFC 208
Yeah.
in Brooklyn." It's just, I don't know, man. I think you have to head up these dream matchups a little bit every now and then to bring up these numbers, because you have to bring in the fan that won't order a normal pay-per-view. Like diehard fans will order 208, but that's about it.
But think about it though. It's the UFC in a way is now turning into WWE.
Sure.
Based off of this alone. Think about what it was like when we were kids. Brock Lesnar, when Brock Lesnar first came in, Goldberg, Triple H, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker. You've got all these guys at the top of their game, everywhere.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you've got a lot of guys that no one's ever really heard of. The UFC, back a couple years ago, you've got guys like, Forrest Griffin, Anderson Silva, Matt Hughes, Chuck Liddell, Rich Franklin, all these big household names.
Yeah.
They've now all gone and retired. Now you're kind of left with today's WWE is guys. You got a guy like Triple H is still around, John Cena's still around, a couple of big name guys, but other than that, it's a lot of guys that no one's really ever heard of.
Unless you follow the sport very closely.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UFC, you've got, guys like, Dan Henderson just fought.
Yeah.
You've got guys like Michael Bisping, who's still a big name. Guys like Conor McGregor. Other than that, you don't really have a lot of marquee names anymore. And I think that's where they struggle the most is you can't have Conor fight every month.
Right.
You're going to have to start relying on some of these younger guys stepping up and trying to become superstars.
Where in the WWE, you kind of can have anybody fight in a month, because you don't have to have the recovery process.
But you still don't have a ton of those. You don't have John Cena versus Triple H every night.
True.
Whereas you don't have Conor McGregor versus Tyron Woodley or versus Nate Diaz every night. So you're going to have mid-card guys fight each other in bigger spots, even though no one really knows them. You know?
I damn near shit just pissed anything in my pants when I heard Joe Rogan talk about the possibility that, because a lot of fans want to see, in July, John Jones comes back from suspension. In July, Brock Lesnar's suspension is up. John Jones wants to fight. Why not?
It'll never happen.
Why not?
That'll be one fight. There's no way.
But why though? Why? If he, because John Jones wants to move up to heavyweight. But even if you don't have them fight in the same match, like against each other, have those two on the same like huge July card. Fuck, dude.
Well, they should have been.
How much money would that bring in, man?
They should have been on 200.
Yeah, true.
Until fucking John Jones got popped because he can't pop one himself.
And how much would that have brought in, man? That would have been insane.
Yeah. I don't think there's any way that they ever fight John Jones and Brock Lesnar. Maybe. I don't think, first of all, I don't think Lesnar goes back ever. I think he's what, pushing 38, maybe?
Yeah.
I think he's going to be 38. The year suspension puts him at 39. I just don't see it. I just don't see him going back unless you give him a fight like you did before with like Mark Hunt or and
it is a dream scenario. And because John Jones is obviously like taking it very seriously, he's working out. He did like a grappling tournament with Dan Henderson about a month ago.
Well, that's because he wants to come and get his fucking belt back.
Yeah, he does.
The belt that he never lost in a fight.
No, and obviously he wants DC again and stuff like that. Which is I love those fights. It's really fun. But with John Jones, I think if they ever did, like I said, it is a dream scenario with him and Brock Lesnar. But if it ever did happen, I know Brock is bigger and he had his time, but I think John Jones, how serious he's taking it right now, and obviously Brock Lesnar's probably not doing any UFC training right now.
No, absolutely
John
not.
Jones, I know he's smaller, but he's like faster, quick. I think he'd beat the piss out of him.
I think even with UFC training, John Jones beats the piss out of
Lesnar.
Lesnar's not a fighter. Lesnar is a freak of nature athlete that you look at how fast he moves and you're like, how the hell is a guy 280 pounds moving that fast?
He's a great wrestler.
Yeah.
I mean, like wrestling.
Right.
Yeah.
National champion at the U of M, which is always fun. Nice, sick, humble brag for us Gopher
He's Canadian
fans.
now. Remember that, though? He's Canadian.
He fights out of Saskatchewan now, which is retarded.
Come on.
But yeah, no, don't get me wrong. That is a dream scenario, but I think the names make it a big fight.
Yeah,
but I don't think it would be a very compelling fight. I think that John Jones would easily outlast Lesnar as far as stamina is concerned. Lesnar would gas himself out, and I think that it wouldn't take Jones. I think Jones could finish that fight in the first round.
Yeah, he could.
I really do.
It wouldn't be the greatest. Like, it wouldn't be like
the way Lesnar wins that fight is if he catches John Jones with just a big lunchbox right hand is what they consider those fists that Lesnar throws.
Oh man,
you're a sick human being when they have to make special gloves for you to fight because the largest size glove doesn't fit your hand like they do Lesnar.
And it's
a sick human being.
It's huge. Oh, he's a big guy, dude. And like obviously, like it's not gonna happen. It's fun to think about.
Yeah.
But if Brock Lesnar did want to come back when his suspension is up in July and fight like a knockoff kind of guy, you have him and you build up the return of John Jones and maybe have him fight like DC or something like that. I'm ordering that fucking pay-per-view,
That's
man.
probably the first fight John Jones gets.
Yeah,
I mean,
that'll be.
I think John Jones wants DC as much. I think DC wants John Jones more than John Jones wants that belt back because people think DC can't beat John Jones. I don't think DC can beat John Jones.
Yeah, right.
Maybe now after realistically 2.5 years off, maybe. But I just don't know. I mean, that's John Jones' belt, and if he gets it back, he might not lose it for a long time.
And because he's on the clean and sober right now, and he's been doing it for a long time.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, because he's good for the game. And if he continues to keep working out and stay sober,
he's that second superstar that the UFC would need alongside Conor.
Yeah,
I mean they've got a superstar brewing in Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah,
Demetrius Johnson is
already
a guy.
Brewed, yeah.
Demetrius Johnson is a guy that people widely consider the best fighter in UFC.
Yeah,
he's a guy that he won't lose his title.
No,
people want him to move up, But shit, if I'm Johnson, why continue to move up? Why not just dominate the division that you've dominated for so long? Look what happened with Anderson Silva when he moved up to fight DC.
Exactly,
he got his ass beat.
Right, because it's
Demetrius Johnson does not stand any chance moving up. He should just stay where he's at, dominate his title, and widely be considered the best fighter and the best pound-for-pound fighter, maybe of all time.
Yeah.
Because that's the route he's going.
Well, and kind of to delve on that, the weight thing, I know we're kind of going long in this first podcast here.
Oh, yeah, we're at an hour and 43 minutes.
But I'm having fun doing it, though.
We're a ways away.
Yeah, it's good conversation. And as we're sticking on this topic and we're talking about, we're both big fans of the Joe Rogan podcast, and he's talking about how these weight cuts for these fighters are getting pretty ugly. And Cyborg obviously just had something on Outside the Lines on ESPN, where she's crying in a tub. There's fighters passing out at weigh-ins, hitting their head, getting knocked out, and like having you're super dehydrated and you're hitting your head very hard. You're getting brain damage, even if it's like to a small extent or to a pretty decent extent. You're getting some kind of damage to your head when you hit stuff, and you're dehydrated and you can't even stay upright. And to have that where you're dropping so much weight and you have to do it in a short amount of time and go out in a fight when you feel like that, I couldn't imagine. Like, they talked about how Damian Maia had a fight against, oh man, is his last name Weidman? Yeah, it's
Chris Weidman.
Chris Weidman. And he had to lose 35 pounds in like 10 days. I mean, like, I'll try to find the story. It's when he pulled that story up, I was like, yeah, right. And I was like, you lost 35 pounds in like 9 or 10 days. I'm like, well, that's fucking kidding me?
Like, and to think, there was a time where they would do the weigh-ins the day of the fight.
Yeah, right.
Not in the UFC, but mostly in boxing. But
sure.
It's like, you make these big weight cuts, like, you have to eventually, like, there was no question they'd eventually do it the day before because fighters were just getting murdered in the ring. You know, it's like, you don't have enough time to get electrolytes back in your body and to get, nutrients back in your body. And so you fight the same day of your weigh-in. Like, there's no way, absolutely no way that you could expect someone to do that.
No, and it's gonna. That's why a lot of fighters don't like dropping weight to fight in different weight classes, because it's just gonna affect them. And yeah, it was. I'm trying to find the number here, but it was just a massive weight cut, and the number is staggering. It was in 2012, so it happened a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, some people think that you should rule out weight cuts. I mean, if given enough time, they're fine, but you can't just spring it last second, because that's when it gets dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I mean, even like with the Conor fight, and it's just, I mean, like Conor McGregor, like, physically can't make 145, but he used to, I mean, he fought strictly usually only at 145. It's like, there's no way you could expect him to make that cut again.
No.
Because he made the cut and he looked like, he looked sickly. He looked like he was going to die.
Yeah. But
then it's like, and it's not fair to the fighters who fight at 145, because, typically, okay, a guy who fights at 145 probably walks around at what, like 150, 155?
About, yeah.
It's like, you've got Conor who he usually cuts to 155. Now he's cutting to 145, and you give him time to get back to his walking around weight. You've got probably a good 30-pound difference. That's just not fair for the guy who's fighting at 145, saying, well, shit, this guy weighs 30 pounds more than me. He's going to kick the shit out of me. It's just not fair.
You can't have it happen. It just doesn't. Like you said, it's not fair.
That's the sole reason why I don't think we'd ever see Lesnar, John Jones. John Jones, cuts to 105 or 205, and he probably walks around. Like, I mean, I'll be interesting to see, like, what does John Jones weigh? What does he walk around at? I mean, according to Wikipedia, John Jones weighs 205 pounds. He probably walks around a little bit heavier, 210, maybe 215. Lesnar cuts down to 265, then walks around at 280.
Oh, that's a big.
That's a 70-pound difference. Is quite a difference.
That's a big. That's like old school UFC days where they just didn't give a shit. They just had
two dudes just go. No, that's nuts.
That is insane. That is a big human being, man. My God, and that's all like muscle.
Yeah,
and it's. I mean, there's a lot of fun things. These divisions are getting better. A lot of fighters are. The sport's going to get bigger and bigger and better, man, which is fun about it, because I'm really heavily getting into UFC, and it's fun to watch. And a lot of people are talking about how Mike Goldberg didn't really get a fair send-off. He didn't really get a send-off at the end of UFC 207.
Which was weird, because nobody knew what was happening.
Well,
nobody really knew. I mean, like, it
Fox Sports came out with an article like a day or two before saying, like, okay, this is the last one.
Right, but that's, I mean, like, in comparison, like, we've known Chris Berman was leaving to do certain, we've known Chris Berman was retiring from doing certain game day shit for ESPN for a year.
It didn't catch you off guard at all.
Right. We know that Joe Buck is considering stopping doing baseball coverage in 2 years when his contract is up. Like, that's like Mike Goldberg. I mean, okay, the guy sucked at doing NFL
Yeah.
coverage for the Vikings and the
Yeah.
Lions, but like 2 days notice and that's it, and that's all, and it kind of begs the question, like, where do they go? I know the name that people have been saying is Jim Rome.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to me.
It's so weird to like.
It's just because I enjoy Jim Rome.
I wouldn't mind it actually. I think
like
he might
Jim
do pretty
Rome
good.
as a broadcaster, and I
Yeah.
remember I can think and picture listening to him speak like as a radio host.
Sure.
There's no way it would sound natural him broadcasting MMA. It just would not sound natural.
Yeah.
To me. And who knows if Joe Rogan's staying?
Yeah, he might be next.
Joe Rogan said in this podcast, he had said something like, it was one of the more recent episodes, the hashtag Who's Fat competition. And
Yeah.
he had said something like they had asked him a question about something down the line, or maybe it was regarding the whole Nick Diaz maybe fighting Conor thing in the summer.
Yeah.
And Joe Rogan said something like, he was like, who knows if I'll even be there to see it? And then he was like, oh wait, did I say something I shouldn't say? Like,
Yeah.
So it brings up the question, like, wow, like, is it WME that doesn't want them there broadcasting? Is it,
Yeah.
just kind of a changing of the because don't get me wrong. I mean, Joe Rogan is great at what he does for the UFC. He's great on analysis. He knows
Very good.
he knows more than you and I combined would ever know in our lifetime.
Oh, man.
About the UFC, about jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, fighting, and all of that. I mean,
He's a kickboxing He's a kickboxing U.S. Open champion. With 90.
yeah, he's like a 2-time black belt in 2 separate forms
Right.
of jiu-jitsu, and it's like, I can if he were to step away from the UFC and focus strictly on his podcast, like, he's still going to be successful.
He's got stand up.
He's
and
as good at his podcast as he is doing UFC.
well, he's talked about it before. He said, "I don't need to keep calling UFC fights to be a UFC fan and be a UFC contributor where I'm talking about it on my podcast." And like I talked to you about before, they do the fight companions. In those fight companions, it's a podcast. And I know Joe Rogan's a big name in the UFC community. Mm-hmm. It's the most watched, listened to UFC show there is.
Yeah.
And it's not even close, the numbers that they get. And yeah, I mean, he's been through it. The guy knows the sport. He lays it out for people who don't know anything about the true, like, jiu-jitsu style, anything about mixed martial arts, really. And I don't. I just watch because I like to see people just fucking swing at each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he lays it out simply for you. But yeah, when he had Eddie Bravo on, who's like I said, a mixed martial arts trainer, he trains all these guys. He's come up with his own moves. He's been in the game for a long time. He said that Joe Rogan has like the best sidekick he's ever seen. And he works with the UFC. Joe Rogan's, if you ever watch his videos of him kicking, you're like, holy shit,
and
dude.
This is Joe Rogan,
Yeah.
Obviously, fear is not a factor for you,
Yeah,
Joe Rogan.
I like that.
Joe
Rogan. Joe Rogan.
That's the greatest. That's if you.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone has seen it. But go see the Dave Chappelle fear factor thing. That's the absolute greatest.
It's great.
Man, an hour and 52 minutes.
Yeah.
Kind of flew by. It
did.
It's a fun direction though, because like we introduced in the beginning, this is episode 1, should be episode 2, but it's not because we fucked up last week.
Maybe that's why we went longer, because
maybe
we had
we're
to
making
combine.
up for it. We're making up for it. So forgive
yeah.
us for this. We're going to try and stick around an hour, but this one we went off on 45 minutes of Grand Theft Auto talk, which I did not expect to do.
Yep.
And then we went on about 40 minutes of UFC talk, which I definitely did not expect to do. But that's kind of what this is going to be. We're going to tell some stories. It'll be a little bit more fun when Justin gets in here as well. We're going to tell stories. We're going to just shoot the shit, talk about sports, talk about life, talk about video games, talk about anything you want to know. If you ever want to hear us debate a topic or hear us discuss a topic, obviously you can reach out to us on social media through our various accounts. You can find me on Twitter at @TheRealZachWright. You can find Travis on Twitter at Travis Hartman.
Travis Big Q.
Travis Big Q now?
Yep.
So find him on Twitter at Travis Big Q. But again, this is kind of going to be the show. This is the land of 10,000 losses.
Yep.
Where we'll focus mostly on sports, but we'll talk about pretty much anything that comes to mind, as we did today with a bunch of video games, UFC and wrestling as well. But again, we hope you enjoy listening to episode 1. Should be episode 2 of this podcast. We'll be back again next week sometime with the real episode 2 again of the Land of 10,000 Losses podcast.
Let's begin now. Let's begin.